The thermometer outside the window read 71 degrees Celsius. She checked it twice through the frost, then turned back to the empty kitchen. The wind had been building since midnight. By dawn, it became a whiteout. She strapped the harness across her chest. Anyway, 2 empty water containers hung from the wooden frame her husband had built. They knocked against each other as she adjusted the leather straps. The sound filled the silence he left behind. Her neighbors would call her foolish. They had called her worse. Yesterday, 3 of them stood at her door offering to make the trek for her. She thanked them and closed the door, 10 kilometers to the river. 10 back. She had done it 200 times since he died. She pulled the wolfskin hood over her head and wrapped the scarf across her face until only her eyes showed. The door rattled in its frame. The storm was waiting. Her home sat at the eastern edge of the settlement. 12 families lived within shouting distance, though the wind made shouting pointless most days. She had shared this house with him for 32 years. He built the walls thick, double-layered wood with moss packed between. The stove squatted in the center like an iron heart pumping heat through the single room. 2 winters ago, the cold took him. Not dramatically. He went to check the trap line, and his heart simply stopped. She found him 3 hours later, already frozen, his face peaceful. The settlement helped with the burial. They brought food for weeks. They offered to move her closer to the center, where the other widows lived together. She refused. She kept his tools organized on the wall. His knife, his saw, the ice chisel he had sharpened 1,000 times. She used them all now. Every morning she woke in darkness and fed the stove, melted snow for washing, ate dried meat and black bread, mended what needed mending. In summer she foraged and preserved. In winter she survived. The river was her lifeline. In the warmer months it ran free and she could collect water in under an hour. But 9 months of the year it froze solid. She had to walk 5 kilometers downstream to where the current kept a section weak, enough to break through. Her neighbors called it stubbornness. She called it living. She stepped outside and the cold hit like a physical wall. The wind drove ice crystals horizontal across the ground. Visibility ended 3 meters from her door. The world became white noise and stinging cold. She knew the path by memory. 50 paces to the settlement edge, then follow the tree line south. The forest would give some shelter until she reached the open stretch. Her breath froze instantly on the scarf. Each inhalation burned her lungs even through the layers of wool. She counted steps to keep her mind focused. At 30 paces, she saw movement ahead. A figure emerged from the whiteout. Dmitri from 2 houses over. He carried an axe and his own water containers. He stopped directly in her path, pointed back toward the settlement, shook his head. She understood. Turned back. Too dangerous. Let me go instead. She walked around him. He grabbed her arm. She pulled free without looking at his face. Kept walking. Behind her he stood watching until the storm swallowed her silhouette. Then he turned back alone. She had made her choice years ago. The tree line provided cover for the first 2 kilometers. She moved between the pines with practiced efficiency, using their trunks to block the worst gusts. Her hands had gone numb inside the double mittens. She flexed her fingers rhythmically to keep blood flowing. The cold at this temperature didn't creep. It invaded. It conquered. Every exposed moment was a battle. She thought about the first winter after he died. How she had accepted help. How Dmitri and the others brought her water weekly. How she sat by the stove feeling useless while they did the work her husband had always done. How small she had felt. He had told her once that survival wasn't about strength. It was about refusing to stop. They had been younger then, newly arrived in Siberia, struggling through their first winter. She had wanted to leave. He convinced her they could endure anything if they kept moving forward. The trees ended. The open stretch began. The wind hit with full force. She leaned into it at a 45-degree angle just to stay upright. The empty containers swung wildly on the harness. She pulled them tight against her sides. 3 kilometers across open ground. No landmarks. No shelter. Just white emptiness and screaming wind. She had a compass but didn't trust it in these conditions. Instead, she used the wind direction. It came from the northwest this time of year. She kept it at her left shoulder and walked. Time became meaningless. There was only the next step, and the next. Her thighs burned. Her face had gone beyond cold into numbness. Ice built up on her eyelashes, forcing her to scrape them, clear every few minutes. The weight of the empty containers felt like mockery. She was risking her life to carry nothing toward something she might not reach. Halfway across, she saw the river marker, a tall post barely visible in the whiteout. The river section was where the current ran fastest. Even at 71 degrees Celsius, it fought freezing. The ice here was thinner, unstable, deadly if you stepped wrong. She approached carefully, found the spot she always used, tested the edge with her boot. The ice chisel came off her belt. She knelt and began chopping. Each strike sent vibrations through her frozen hands. The blade bit through 10 centimeters. 20, 30. Water appeared, black and moving beneath the ice. She widened the hole. Her hands shook as she dipped the first container. The water was shockingly warm compared to the air. Steam rose from the hole like a living thing. She filled both containers, secured the caps, stood. The return journey started. She made it 2 kilometers before her body began failing. The wind had shifted. Now it came from the east, disorienting her. The loaded containers pulled at the harness with vicious weight. Each one held 20 liters. 40 kilos total, plus the gear. Her legs trembled. She stopped to rest and realized stopping was dangerous. The cold would win if she stayed still. She forced herself forward, 1 kilometer into the open. Stretch her vision began to blur. The whiteout and her own exhaustion merged into a single white confusion. She couldn't tell if she was walking straight or in circles. Her knee buckled. She caught herself, kept moving. The containers felt like they weighed 100 kilos now. Her shoulders screamed. The harness straps cut through her layers. She thought about releasing them, abandoning the water, saving herself, her husband's voice in her memory. Keep moving forward. She fell, got up, fell again. The tree line was somewhere ahead. It had to be. She had done this 200 times. This was the first time she thought she might not make it back. She reached the trees more by luck than navigation. Her hand touched bark and she nearly wept. The forest blocked the wind enough to think clearly. She leaned against a pine for 5 minutes, then forced herself to continue. The settlement was close now. Her door appeared through the white. She stumbled inside and collapsed. The containers hit the floor. Water sloshed but didn't spill. She had sealed them properly, even in crisis. It took an hour by the stove before feeling returned to her extremities. The pain was extraordinary. Her fingers blazed. Her face throbbed. She made tea with shaking hands and drank it to hot in the silence of her home. She finally let herself think about what had happened out there, how close it had been, how her body had nearly quit. He had asked her to stay strong, to never become a burden, to survive on her own terms. She had interpreted that as refusing all help, as proving daily that she could still do what they had done together. But he had never walked alone. They had been a team. Survival wasn't about isolation. Tomorrow, Dmitri would probably come by again. He would offer to help with water. This time, she would say yes. Not because she was weak, because she was finally ready to keep living instead of just refusing to die. She sat by the stove and felt something close to peace.